Hello and welcome to All For United WFC. Hello and welcome to All For United with me, John Foster, MUFC. Got Connor with us today, and we've also got a very special guest, probably one of the most high-profile people we've had on the channel in the past 18 months. Willie, thank you very much for coming on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for asking me to come on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. What we try and do on this channel is we try and get journalists on at the right time. We try and get rival fans on at the right time. And for me, if I could pick any guest to preview Man United women's team versus Everton's women's team, there's only one person that comes to mind, and everyone was guessing your name throughout the day. Was putting a few teasers out. There was a Phil Neville. A Phil Neville name popped in there. Ella too popped in there at some point. But yeah, a lot of people guessed you, and I think it's great. It's great to see. I think a lot of people will actually, what we can see by the amount of people watching already, a lot of people want to hear what you have to say on both teams. So, Willie, before we get started, obviously I know that you've had a bit of a busy day. Do you want to just kind of give the viewers a little bit of an insight into what you've been up to today?
Yeah, just looking ahead to the Euros actually, and what sort of things I might get up to, see if I can assist England in any way. I've started doing a little bit of coaching with under 18s, assisting them a coach, which has been good just to get me back on the grass and get me back in a football environment. And there's a chance that might get extended into more of a scouting role for the senior team. So that's interesting how that might develop as we get closer to a very exciting Euros, hopefully.
Yeah, you're hoping to attend a lot of the matches?
Yeah, definitely. I've actually got a ridiculously busy June, so the fact that it starts the beginning of July, it should be good timing for me. So it'd be good to go to the opening match, which is a special one, I think. And yeah, I'll try and take in as many games as possible because I think it's going to be the most open Euros that we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Conor, I know you have mixed thoughts. Like a lot of Man United fans on internationals, you know, it's very much usually Man United fans aren't a big fan of internationals, men's and women's team. But it's still great to have that the Euros actually in our country, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I'm probably the wrong person to come to about about internationals, but I think just in terms of growing the sport, particularly on the women's side, having it in this country, you know, having stars from all over Europe, world class talent in this country playing, it will help grow the game as well. So yeah, it's a positive thing from that aspect, getting to see players that you might not normally see, in the WSL. So yeah, no, I think it's a good thing for bringing new people in, and also just to see different types of players as well. And also as United fans, you're on the lookout for top talent as well that could potentially come across.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you to everybody in the comments. We can stick a few questions in there and we'll try and get through some of them as we go along. This show's been going on for about 18 months now, so we've got a few new fans. So there's probably going to be a few fans who may have heard your name, who may not know exactly how you're linked to Man United. So I'll just quickly fill them in very briefly. Obviously, you was there at the very start with Casey as our assistant manager. I think that's the correct terminology. And obviously you moved to Everton to have a career as a main head coach. Was that something that was on your mind for quite a while there, Willie? Was that like your ambition to become a head coach of a WSL team?
Well, I'd always been a head coach, so I'd spent 4.5 years at Hibs, and then I moved to England in 2015 with Bristol City, and had three really good years at Bristol, and then the opportunity came to. It was good timing to leave Bristol. I feel I'd taken them as far as I could with the budget that I had. So I think the opportunity to come to Manchester United was one that I couldn't turn down. And I was actually talking about it last week at a League Managers Association chat about how I was excited to see how I could assist someone rather than be the lead coach. And because I knew what I needed in a number two, because I'd been 7.5 years as a number one, so I knew what I needed as a number two. So I felt I was in a good place to try and give Casey that, and hopefully I gave her that. It never lasted as long as either of us had anticipated, But I always knew, we both always knew that I was going to be at number one again, but we probably thought it was going to be a couple of years down the line. And I've always said it was the right job at the wrong time. But, you know, sometimes you've got to take the emotion out of these decisions. And despite, you know, freely admitting I was a massive Manchester United fan and suddenly working for the team that you'd supported for, probably if I tell you how many years, it gives my age away, but for a long, long time, probably since Fergie joined in '86. And I had to take the emotion out of it, and the Everton job felt like the right job for me at the time. And unfortunately, I was the first one to jump off the ship. And but I truly feel blessed for spending 5 months at the club, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Conor, if you've got any questions, please just jump in. But I do just want to mention this. You mentioned that you were the first one to maybe like jump ship, but there's still a few players who are currently there now who've been there from the beginning, and you know, massive fan favourites. Do you want to give a shout out to maybe some of those players?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I've actually worked with a number of the players at previous clubs that I've been at. You know, like Mary Earps at Bristol, and Hayley Ladd was my captain at Bristol for a spell there. So, you know, I've worked with a number of the players there. But, you know, the Ella Toons, the Katie Zellums, Martha Harris, Kirsty Smith, you know, all those players who were there at the start. You know, the two exciting wingers that are there, Leah Galton and Kirsty Hansen. You know, there's still, I think there's still more there than not there from the original 21. You know, obviously Emily Ramsey and Fran Bentley are out on loan, but still very much part of the club, I think. And as I said, Martha, you know, Millie Turner's there. I can't believe I almost forgot Millie. You know, I signed Millie for Bristol. I made her captain of Bristol at 21-year-old. Yeah. You know, I think she was going through a tough time, bizarrely, at Everton when I signed her, and helped Casey bring her to the club. And so, yeah, there's a number of players there that I really enjoyed working with, and it's great to see them continuing to grow and develop along with the club.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you mentioned Leah Galton's name there as well. We had Nam Hartley on the show with Natalie a few months ago now, that was. So, yeah, it feels like, as the Man United journey, it feels like so much has happened so soon as well. So it feels really, really weird. And then obviously moved to Everton, spent a few years there. And now you're pretty much, would you say that you're a neutral, or do you have like a fondness for either club? What are your thoughts there?
It's really tough, because I suppose when you work in the game, like I'm a Manchester United men's supporter, because for 3 years the women's team were one of my rivals, so it's so difficult to support them. But at the same time, every single week since I left Everton, I've been caught somewhere between wanting them to do well, because I signed the players and a lot of my staff are still there, and wanting them to get beat because they got rid of me. So it's a really it's horrible. I cheer when they score, and I cheer when they concede. It's so strange. But yeah, I would say in terms of Sunday's game, I'm very much a neutral.
Just quickly off the back of that, and obviously, you know what you can say on there. When you were obviously over at Everton, do you almost still have one eye on what Manchester United are doing in terms of results and that kind of thing, or do you just have to take that? I think you said earlier about taking that kind of emotional connection maybe out of it. Do you still keep? I'm just intrigued because I'm just speaking to managers, whether they keep one eye on maybe their former team, and as you said, they're a fan as well. Whether you kept an eye on them or whether you just cut away from that completely.
Yeah, I must admit, and just now that you mention it, you know, do I do it consciously or subconsciously? But you know, I still check the Hibs result every weekend, and that's the men's and the women's team. And I was never a Hibs fan when I grew up. My family were Rangers supporters, so in terms of the Scottish team, but I still check the Hibs result. So yeah, I must check the Manchester United women's result. I mean, as a manager, you're very aware of every team result, every team's starting lineup, every team's substitutions, you know, how the games went, possession stats, because that's just part of your job, I think. So, and I still do that because I'm still trying to keep those habits in place. So I'm still very much aware of the result and parts of the performance.
Definitely. I just wanted to bring up this comment from Lanza because I feel like it's a brilliant question. To be fair, it's one of the ones I probably would have asked anyway. Just asking there about going into how early you identify maybe transfer targets, either be for January or the summer. Obviously, we know that some you can identify somebody, may not get them in January, and it might go on to the summer. Do you plan maybe 6 months ahead, a year ahead, or is there some deals where you see them and then 2-3 weeks later you're looking to get that over the line?
Yeah, I think some transfers happen really quickly and are unplanned, but I always sort of, at Everton certainly, I always took pride in being a couple of transfer windows ahead of myself, and I think that's one thing that we did well, was our recruitment at Everton. Bearing in mind we went there when we were bottom of the league, and then that first summer the players we managed to attract to the club. So I think our transfer windows were always sort of 2 windows ahead, and the reason for that is actually because of 2 or 3 of the top leagues in the world. If you look at America and if you look at Sweden, their main transfer window is January, whereas our main transfer window is the summer. So you very much need to be aware of who's out of contract in those type of countries. So I always feel that being 2 transfer windows ahead in terms of your planning was the way to go about it. And then obviously that changes as soon as one window slams shut and you're cursing your luck because one deal never went through that you needed to. You've already got the next part of that plan in place for the next window. So we did that in the summer. We never got someone, and we at the time I still call we, but Everton had plans in place to do it in January instead. So we're always quite well far planned.
So we've got a game coming up on Sunday. It's at Old Trafford. Lots of hype. We were speaking just before we went live. I think it was just before we went live. It's it seems to have been going on for ages now. We knew it was going to happen sometime this season. November it was announced that it was going to be the Everton reverse fixture. I think it was actually announced at the reverse fixture that it would be at Old Trafford. Just what are your thoughts on the men's stadiums, because we debate on here quite a lot, and we've got some people who think that there should be more games at the men's stadium for a number of reasons. We've got some people like myself who prefer the 12,000 seat capacity and try and fill that up first before we do anything more extravagant. I'm fully behind 1 game a season, absolutely. What do you think about the pros and cons, or where do you kind of sit on playing in these big stadiums?
I agree with you about let's fill what we've got before we move on to the next stage. So I think filling the smaller stadiums is the way to go, be that Lee. Chelsea do it well with Kings Meadow. The City Academy is probably a nice size, but you need to be filling that out every week before I think you move on to the next level. However, everybody's excited about Sunday. So, you would be excited. I mean, I think the Manchester United fans are quite a partisan bunch. So I'm sure they get excited about every Sunday's match. But this weekend, especially Old Trafford. So that would probably justify having the odd game there. I'm sure the players will love it. Mm-hmm. The one challenge I had at Everton was I played 2 games at Goodison. One of them was COVID, and we beat Chelsea in the FA Cup. And then one of them was fans were back, first game of the season, live on BBC, and the whole occasion, I think, just became too much. Obviously, the club were doing a lot of talking about Champions League and challenging for top 3, and I just think the whole occasion became too much, and Goodison probably played its part in that, because we certainly never got a home advantage that day. Because I think mostly as players, when you normally get, what do they get at Walton Hall, 1,000 say? When you suddenly get whatever it was, 6,500, 7,000, and the demographics of a lot of crowds, you just hear noise, because a lot of them are kids, and you're not sure if they're shouting for you or against you. And I definitely don't think we felt home advantage at Goodison that day. I think Sunday will be different depending on the size of the crowd and the sheer size of Old Trafford. I don't think you can ever mistake, who's the home team. So I think for one-off games, it's really exciting. It would be interesting to speak to the players after the game on Sunday to see how they find it, but hopefully get a fantastic crowd. And it doesn't feel like, you know, a couple of dozen people in a massive crowd. It won't be a couple of dozen people, but you know, you need a lot of people to make Old Trafford feel full.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm kind of on board with that as well in terms of, cause we've obviously done Reading away this season. That was obviously the Medeski. We've done Leicester, the King Power. Birmingham was obviously the St Andrews. So we've done a few now where it's in these bigger grounds and it's never felt the same in terms of when you go there as an away fan. It's very kind of, I think like you said there, especially at Old Trafford, I worry that the noise is going to be drowned out of it and almost echo and bounce a little bit, which is not ideal when there's only a small section of us in the corner. Just on that, then, you mentioned the Goodison Park game. Did you have to maybe prepare differently then? Was there anything in the preparation that you had to do differently just because of it being a different stadium? Or did you just go in thinking it's the same and try and prepare the players in exactly the same way as you would?
We took them to Goodison. You know, we took them there. We had a breakfast there or a lunch there. And we also did a visit, and we tied that in with some media work. You know, we did. I think it was a build up to the game because we never. For us, we brought in 8 new players during the summer, so that wasn't just the first time they were about to play at Goodison. It was the first time they'd even seen it or been in it. So we wanted to make sure we had a visit or 2 visits before that, just to start familiarising yourself, to be in the change rooms, to get a feel for the change rooms, to know where you're going to be sitting, and getting yourself prepared. So we did a bit of that. Nothing really changed in terms of training sessions or messages that we gave them. But one, you know, it'd been great to have trained there. But you know, it's we feel, I suppose, lucky enough just to get the men's stadium once a season. Never mind asking for a training session the day before.
If I could just jump on that as well, I think just a couple of things have just been mentioned there in the last 5 minutes. I think the slight difference of being at Old Trafford would be, I just don't think there's going to be that many Everton fans turning up from what I'm hearing. So I think any kind of noise, yes, I agree. You might not actually understand what's being said, but I think any kind of noise will be very, I think the players will know that it's support more than, you know, against them, which is a good thing for us at least. But there was one more thing, Willie, that you mentioned about the start of this season. And we've mentioned it on this show a few times, the pressure that you must have been under to achieve this season with Everton, about all the talk about top 3. Where did that kind of come from? Because you know, that was a massive kind of step. It's okay to be ambitious, of course, but do you think that was kind of like pressure that just was unneeded, really?
Well, the club invested a lot in the summer. You know, I felt our budget was probably up there with Manchester United. Still way short of City, Arsenal and Chelsea, and that's what I was trying to get the powers that be to understand that, you know, just because we put in an extra £1 million or whatever, we were still a couple of million short of the top 3. But what we did when we went into the club was we always wanted to do better than the year before. So we just finished 5th, so it was about finishing 4th. And then when they put in the extra investment, you know, we signed some terrific talent. Hannah Bennison was a great example that, you know, we beat some top clubs to get our signature. And the club went, well, instead of aiming for 1 place above, you know, let's try and break that top 3. Probably the mistake we made as a club was being so vocal about that. You know, I think it's fine to have these ambitions, but maybe we keep those ambitions to ourselves a little bit more, or keep it in a smaller and tighter group rather than national and worldwide media.
So do you think the fans, sorry Connor, just 2 seconds, do you think the fans in general expect too much too quickly? Or because, you know, we signed Senior Brun in January, we signed Balvisa, well, we signed her pretty much last January, but she came in the summer. You know, it surely takes a bit of time it doesn't matter how well you played for your country or in your previous league. It doesn't mean that you've got to come straight into the WSL and just suddenly get that chemistry with so many different players, and it's not that easy, is it?
No, it's not. And, you know, I signed 3 Swedish players who came back from Tokyo with a silver medal, you know, but even after 3 or 4 weeks, they went, you know, they were saying how different it was. England was just massively different to what they'd experienced because of the intensity. And I suppose that came down to the intensity of the way we trained and the intensity of the matches. You play Chelsea, it's a very tough game. But you play Birmingham City and you're not getting an easy game either. So every single game in WSL is competitive, and the bare minimum, it's physical. So yeah, it does take players, but I don't think fans should lessen their expectations, because that's what makes football, isn't it? Fans should be excited. Fans should be demanding. Fans pay their money to give their opinion. It's probably the people that are somewhere in between. The people at the club making the decisions need to put a little bit of perspective on things and reality and say, right, okay, this is what we want to do. Success is never ever a straight line, and there's always bumps along the way. But the fans, look, let's not tell the fans to drop their expectations, because that's what makes football, isn't it? So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I'm just intrigued, just quickly as a follow-up, because I know before we bring it back to Old Trafford and obviously the game, just whether the players were aware of that in terms of obviously Everton, the expectation of pushing on, whether that conversation was ever had. Because I've spoken to coaches in the past that some say they do put the pressure on and say, yeah, we want this season, and some say that they don't, and they just let the players kind of, obviously you want to win every game, but they just leave it up to the players then to make their own, and you can tell them which ones have got the ambitions. Were those conversations ever had?
I think some players only signed for us because of our ambitions. So you've got to be careful when you're trying to get to the next level and you want to sign that next level of player. So as I say, Hannah Bennison is a great example. Even Izzy Christensen, bringing her back from Lyon, they were good examples of, you need to make sure that you're realistic, but you set your ambitions right, or those players will be going, well, why do I want to sign for a mid-table team? Hannah Bennison was a really good example, because she could have chose Manchester City or Bayern Munich, and she came to Everton. That might seem a little bit bizarre now, but she knew she was going to an ambitious club, but she had a very good chance of playing a lot of minutes. So, it was trying to pitch them. And to be fair, when we got the players in at the start of pre-season, it was the players that said, we want to go for it. We want to maximise everything we've got this season, and we want to go for it. And if going for it means top 3, let's do it. And actually, if you look at Manchester City's start, it could have been done this season. I think it could have been done, and Manchester United could be the ones that profit from it. Now, that's not to say they wouldn't have done it anyway, but Manchester City's start to the season has certainly helped everybody have that little glimmer of third is realistic.
100%, absolutely, yeah. There's a comment by Stuart on screen. Good opportunity to bring this conversation a little bit about Skinner and maybe what you see Man United downfalls could be, or this season in regards to the Everton game. What do you think about Skinner?
That's a question.
I'm a massive fan. Let me tell you a little bit about what the fan base think.
Okay.
So I think he was bought in and he was already 50-50, maybe 60-40 in favour. I think a lot of people didn't know much about him at the start. They looked on Wikipedia and they saw what he'd done in US, which stats-wise wasn't great, but obviously there's always reasons behind that. And I think some of the more fans who knew a bit more about him had a lot of belief in him. They cast their mind back a few years ago, what he'd done at Birmingham. So I think already the fans were kind of divided, and obviously Case had a lot of love at the club as well. So I think he came in already like kind of a little bit, I don't know the best way of putting it, but it was going to be tough for him no matter what kind of start he had. I think gradually he tried to warm to the fans by some of the things that he said. Some people actually like the way he talks. Me personally, I would much rather hear him talk in an interview than a robot. I love hearing him talk. Some people just think it's like wishy-washy, it means nothing. So again, it's very divisive. I think some of the fans expect a lot very quickly. Bearing in mind, some of the fans also thought 9 months ago that we was going to finish below Everton. I think it's just very divisive. I think now they're coming around a little bit. That they can see that the way he's playing, they can see that there are moments in the big games where we have won. You know, we got that win against Arsenal away, and me and Connor was there. That was the best moment in my Man United women's team career, you know, history so far. But I just think that there's some people out there that still got massive doubts, and I don't think that anyone or some of those fans won't overcome their doubts until he does win a trophy of some sort. Would you kind of say that as well, Willie? Do you think that it's all about getting that trophy to win the rest of the fan base over?
I think so. I think if you look at his Birmingham career and you look at his Orlando career, both of them started slowly. The style of football he plays, his communication style, I think, does take a bit of time to get across to the players and for them to buy into. But he's done that, and I think any results that have not went his way are not necessarily down to him. I think the squad is still a little bit short of real experienced winners. You know, players who have a number of medals in their back pocket. And I spoke about it on BBC a few weeks ago, I think, when I did the Manchester Derby. I said that Manchester United still need to buy more players who know how to win and who have experience in winning.
Yeah.
And it's been fantastic, the journey that they've been on, but I still think they need to bring in, you know, for me, if you're going to start winning trophies, you will stop buying players who are not getting a game at big clubs, and you will start buying players who do get games and win medals at other big clubs. And I think that's probably been where the club have fell short a little bit. And I think they're on the right lines. You know, I think Senior Brown's a fantastic signing. I think Vilda Borisa has had a good season, and I suppose I'm a little bit surprised she's not played much last month. But there's still a little bit to do on the recruitment front for the team, I think, to really turn them into winners. And until that happens, that's probably going to be the acid test. Can Mark turn these players into winners, or does he need to bring winners into the club?
It's an interesting point. I think obviously me and John have defended him to the hilt, certainly on that tough run that we had, you know, in kind of October time, and you know we kept saying,
even that tough run, it was only just a few draws, like 3 or 4 draws on the top. You know, it wasn't. Sorry, I'm getting defensive already. I'm getting defended him, but. Carry on, Connor.
No, I was just going to say during that run, obviously we defended him more than a lot because you know we could see that it was more kind of individual errors. And I think once the players obviously cross the white line, it's very difficult, I would assume, as a manager to make too much of an impact. You know, if somebody makes an error on the pitch, that's I always say that's how can a manager mitigate for that. But just a quick one off the back of that, then, do you think Skinner? Because there's a lot of fans that would believe that I think a lot of the fan base like to believe that we've changed Skinner in the way that kind of he talks and his approach to games. Do you think that is the case, or do you think he's probably completely oblivious to what maybe fans, say online and what people say in the media, and he's just focusing day in, day out on what he knows?
I think Mark's very intelligent. I think he's probably very social media intelligent. I think he's very well aware of what people have said. However, I don't think necessarily the club have changed him because he's very principled in terms of the way he plays. I think he's adjusted back to English football because I do think, in the States it's completely different, and it'll be interesting to speak to Casey in a couple of years' time once she's been there and lived it and breathed it for a couple of years. So I think he's adapted back to English football, and I think it's just been a case of time. And I think the fans have finally bought into him. As you say, Connor, how do you legislate for a player making a mistake in the 6-yard box in the last couple of minutes of a game? You can't, apart from not pick them, but they might have had a fantastic game up until then. So, and that's what I mean. Individual mistakes are not made as often with seasoned pros who have won things. So, yeah, I don't necessarily think Mark has changed. I think he's adapted back to the English game, and I think fans are finally seeing the bigger picture of what he's trying to do.
Definitely, yeah, I agree.
He's a good manager.
With well, me and Connor, and not just me and Connor, I think a lot of people, a lot of fans on this channel and in the comments have defended him quite a lot, and I agree. When you're trying to when you've had such a bad summer that we had, and I say bad in the sense of the amount of pressure that we had on social media, with all the articles going out, with the sudden departure of Casey, and everything, just, you know, the media in regards to our training facilities, Skinner coming over to a new country, it was never going to happen overnight. And for him to get us on side, and the fact that we even in the Champions League race, a lot of fans that we had on this channel didn't even think that we was going to be in for a Champions League race this season. You know, there's talk about stability. If we get fourth, I'll be very happy. And I could understand that because of the amount of changes that was made over summer. So the fact that we've even got this bit of belief that we can get top three shows how far that we have come from the summer.
Sorry, John, can I just ask one question before you move back on it? I'm just intrigued, just on just keeping with kind of the Skinner theme, I guess, if you could call it that. Just on obviously on Martin Ho as well, obviously being number 2 there, if you can call him number 2s, head coach, whatever the official terminology is, and just kind of the impact that they have, because we see at games that Martin Ho is very much the one on the touchline. Skinner will be the one that's kind of sat on the bench and kind of will confer with the rest of the bench, and Martin's the one that's on the touchline, you know, talking to the players. What kind of influence do you think that maybe he has? And just maybe you can refer it to Everton as well. Just how much influence, let's say, number 2s have on the head coach? Do you think he is as involved in kind of the tactical planning and the setup of the game?
I'm not sure if Martin will be involved with as much of the tactical stuff, but he's probably allowed the team to keep part of their identity from Casey's time. And that was maybe something that lacked in Mark's first few months. Mm-hmm. Was I thought they'd lost the things that made them the team they were last season, which was aggression, which was on the front foot, trying to play forward, was pressing the life out of teams. And I thought they'd lost a bit of that, and that was the real strengths that Casey had developed. And you've got to remember, Casey was a big character to replace, so it was going to be tough for anybody. Not quite an Alex Ferguson idea, but you know, the fact that she'd had all those players from day one, and to them she was Manchester United women, so she was a massive figure to try and replace, and that was going to be tough for anybody to come in and not just win over the fans, but win over the players who'd been so used to Casey's methods for 3 years. And I don't know if maybe he allowed Martin to have a little bit more influence, but you can see Martin outside the park is quite aggressive in terms of the way he wants players to jump, in terms of triggers for their press, and the team have almost got that part back, and they seem to have fused a really nice, almost, they brought both parts together. They brought Mark's very detailed way he wants to play, and the way Casey had them basically a team of warriors, all fighting for each other, working hard, and he sort of brought that two together. Now there's still some moments where you don't get that. Like, I do think the first 10-15 minutes of that second half against Manchester City was really disappointing. You know, where they're 1-0 up at half time and then they go and capitulate. But you know, certainly going back to the original question of how big an influence number 2s can have, I think they can have a huge influence. Certainly my number 2, Chris Roberts, who I've worked with now at 3 different clubs, I cannot work the way I want to work without him. That's how crucial he is as a number 2 to me, because he is an absolute genius on the training field, and he takes most of the sessions for me. So I think number 2 is dependent on that relationship. But Mark brought somebody with him, didn't he? As well. So, you know, it might have taken a while to get their working practices sorted in terms of who does what, who's got an influence in what areas, and about him and Martin developing that relationship themselves. Just like, you know, we talk about new signings, developing relationships on the pitch and settling in. It was also got to, you know, you've got that team of staff, and I think they all stayed. I don't think anybody left. Well, El Turner's obviously left since, but yeah. I don't think Ian Wilcock stayed, Martin Ho stayed. So, you know, developing those relationships as a group of staff becomes really important as well. And I think you've probably seen that in terms of Martin taking a real lead for the majority of the 90 minutes during on a Sunday.
Willie, I'm going to let you rest your voice for a second, and I'll ask Connor just how Man United are going to win Everton then, and then I can ask maybe Willie the reverse. How does Everton beat Man United?
I mean, I could go full on Michael Owen here and just say score more than the opposition. That's a simple way of doing it. Just score more than Everton do. But I think no disrespect to Everton, but I think if you looked player for player, we're probably stronger. So I think it goes back to what our issues all season. Earlier on in the season, when you're looking at the Spurs and Everton draws, you're looking at the West Ham draw recently. It's been kind of individual errors or fitness that have let us down, and that is the one worry I have. Obviously, on a massive Old Trafford pitch, the fitness. I'm glad we've got 10 days off, or it would have been 10 days from West Ham before this one. But I think we've got the players there. I think Tooney will be on fire, as the song goes. But I think she'll be up for it. I think the players should be up for it. I think it can go one or two ways. And Willie talked earlier about the occasion. That's a slight worry for me. We're expecting 15, 20k. I think is the rumored amount. Could that get to them, or it could have the reverse, which I hope it is, where the players are really relishing that, and they want to score that goal in front of the Stretford end. They want to score that goal, in front of East Stand and run up to the corner flag where we're going to be in J Stand. All of those kind of moments. I'm sure that they'll all be thinking about the game before. So I think we've got enough player. Hopefully, some of the injured players can come back. Obviously, Lads being one of them. How close is she to fitness? We're not too sure. Obviously, we know the two centre halves are going to be out as well. Hopefully Maria's back. But I just think player for player, we've got enough. It's just maybe the occasion that's slightly worry for me.
I very often think the same with Man United women's team, just going into any game. This was even under Casey as well. I always thought to myself, so long as we concentrate at the back and we don't do anything stupid, we've always got the creativity and we've got something going forward to actually win most games, even against the top three. It is just making sure that we don't have a blip at the back. And the run that we went on over Christmas time, where we did win 7 games and didn't concede 1 goal, admittedly some of them were the easier teams. We didn't make any silly mistakes that cost us. And I think that's the thing. If we can go the full 90 minutes without doing anything silly at the back, and just having that concentration, then there's no reason why we can't have 20 attempts with 5 on target and at least 3 or 4 goals, you'd like to think. But Willie, what's your thoughts on the opposite side then? They're up against it, aren't they? But they'll go in there, yeah. Think they can get a point at least.
I mean, I think Chris obviously managed to get 3 wins in a row, and then you play Chelsea midweek, you play City in the Cup, you then play City on Wednesday night before you go to Old Trafford. So that's a tough run. That's a tough run for Everton, and I think a lot will be dictated by what team they can put out. I know they've had a lot of issues. They made 6 subs yesterday, so one of them must have been a concussion substitution. I'm assuming that was Gabby George, judging by the way I watched most of the game, and she took a head knock, and then she was subbed. But yeah, as I said, they made 6 subs, so one of the subs was a concussion sub, so I'm assuming that was Gabby, and that would be a big blow. And it'll be a big blow for Gabby as well, because as you say, you hope that the occasion at Old Trafford galvanises the Manchester United players, but we're talking about the biggest club in the world here, which means there must be Manchester United fans in most teams. So I'm sure there are a couple of Manchester United fans in the Everton team who will also be galvanised by playing at Old Trafford. So they will want to do well on that stage. But yeah, I think for Everton, it's about who they can get on the pitch and how the game starts. I think they've got to try and shut up that 20,000 as quickly as possible. And if you can start on the front foot and maybe force a mistake, maybe through nerves, you're talking about that's maybe something that's been a theme over a couple of years, where the odd individual error has cost the team. I think Everton have then got to try and capitalise on that and score as quickly as possible. But they've got to stay in the game. Whatever they do, they've got to stay in the game, and that will not be easy if the reverse happens and Manchester United get up a bit of steam, get fans behind them, and then they just start. They'll become relentless if that happens.
Do you think then, just on that, it goes to John's question here about how will Everton cope with the occasion? Do you think that the fact that some of these Everton players, or most of them, have already played in front of a bigger crowd, obviously at Goodison, do you think, obviously I know it's different stadium, it'll be you'd hope, obviously a much bigger crowd, obviously on Sunday. Do you think that they'll take that going, we've already done this in terms of playing a bigger ground, albeit maybe not Old Trafford, that will help them? Because obviously we know that some of these girls have played at Old Trafford before, but obviously that was behind closed doors, so there wasn't the fans in there. Do you think that will maybe give Everton a slight edge going in, that they've already maybe done this on a bigger scale, maybe at Goodison?
I think it will suit them, because all the pressure that was on them the first game of the season will now be on Manchester United. So I'd certainly think the occasion, the roles reversed, will definitely suit Everton. You know, you've got to remember, some of these players have played in massive games. Like the Swedes that have come back from the Olympics, like Izzy Christensen at Lyon. I remember watching Valerie Govan play for France against Brazil, and there was, I think, 25,000 at it in Nice. So a lot of these Everton players have played in front of big crowds before. What I think the difference will be is all the pressure is off them and on Manchester United, and that could be the key to how that Everton team perform.
You mentioned the amount of fans that's there, and Willie, you've been on like both sides of it when it comes to the United fan base inside the stadium. From an opposing manager, you know, how does it kind of have an impact on you and your players? Have your players ever turned around and said, you know, obviously don't name anyone, but like to say, do the players ever say, "Oh, they're putting me off," or does it roll them up? Because I know Alex Greenwood's come out in the past and said, you know, that she doesn't mind being booed or anything, because, you know, it makes her want to do better and probably celebrate in front of us if she scored. How does the opposing side feel when the United fan base gets so loud?
I think it was quite unique with Everton, because the players just used to laugh at the amount of abuse I used to get. So I think it was quite a unique rivalry where it was really just aimed at one person. I don't think anybody from Manchester United had anything against Everton. So, yeah, you know what? I think it's good for the game. I do think players can get wound up by it because it's something that they're not used to, and they haven't been used to up until this point. So I do think if they allow that to sort of frustrate them, I do think you can put them off a game, because it is unique in the women's game. It doesn't really it doesn't happen in England. You go to Chelsea, you go to Arsenal, who can have as many fans, if not more, at their games than you find at Lee, but the type of fans is just different, and I do think it can be intimidating for players just because it's completely different.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to add, John, you mentioned the Greenwood there, and I think it just me coming in, obviously this season going. I think I'm glad to hear that somebody else thinks it's good for the game in terms of that little bit of rivalry. Because I know when Greenwood came out afterwards, and she did win. I think when they beat us, it's when they drew with us in 2-2 in the league at the start of the season. When City did score, she turned straight to us, put her hands to her ears, kind of thing, and that she celebrated in front of us in some way or shape or form. Anyway, obviously that's quite frustrating, but that's what you want, and I think that's what will bring fans back, and it generates that kind of that rivalry and builds games up as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, John, I just wanted to
No. Just on that, even like we were down at Dagenham and Redbridge, wasn't we, to watch us play West Ham, and you know we ended up conceding that late goal, and West Ham fans were quiet the whole game, and then as soon as they get that equaliser, they all start singing. You're not singing anymore, even though we were. But no, it's great to see that, and that's it. We don't mind, you know, receiving it as well. It's just a bit of an atmosphere there, and this is kind of like what a lot of Man United fans want. Not everyone, you know. I appreciate there's some people that doesn't necessarily want the game to change, and they're happy with the way it is, and I fully respect that. But the likes of me and Connor, who've obviously come across from the men's game, you know, and a lot of the Man United fans, especially the vocal ones, have come across from the men's game. You know, they want to try and bring that kind of atmosphere, because that's the way we feel that we should support our team, and, you know, be loud and, you know, design these flags and show our support that way as well. There's a few questions in the comments, and then we'll kind of wrap up the show. But before we ask these questions on screen, really just what are your thoughts on your kind of future, and have you got anything in mind? There was a question at the start of the show in the comments saying, have you had any offers or anything like that? I don't want you to give too much away, Willie, but have you got anything in mind? Are you leaning towards anything in particular?
Yes, said like doing a little bit with England 18s, which has been good. It's certainly not long term for me. You know, I think I'm too young still to take over a national team. It's not enough activity. I spoke to a couple of European clubs, which is really interesting. I've always said that I'd like to go to Europe at some point, and my little boy's he's not even 2 years old yet, so he's only 2 in the summer. So you know, it's a great time to maybe take the family on a little journey elsewhere for a couple of years. So I don't think anything's going to come up in England, to be honest. I think there's been a big turnover in the last sort of 18 months of managers. So I don't think there's going to be anything coming up in the summer that will interest me. It'd be silly to say that it wouldn't. Like, everybody wants to come to England just now, don't they? The WSL is getting massive. So it'd be silly for me to just completely turn my back on that and say, well, I'm definitely going to Europe. But unless something really interesting comes up in England, you know, Europe is realistic for us, and it's something that I'm keen to do at some point anyway. So, yeah, maybe now's the right time. But again, it has to. Whatever I do, it has to be the right project.
Definitely, yeah. John Fry has said, what is Willie's solution for the refereeing standards in the women's game? So fans believe that the refereeing standards aren't the greatest. What are your thoughts on how we can potentially increase the standards?
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? It's like, I see some mistakes recently that I'm going, full-time referees, that doesn't matter, because full-time referees for me is mostly down to fitness. They get fitter, they can spend a bit more time analysing games beforehand, so they get to know the players a little bit better. And I think it's important that referees know how teams play as well. Are they a high press and aggressive team? Because that actually can start formulating what might happen and little things that they're trying to do. So I do think making the referees full time will help, but there are also some decisions I see recently, and I'm going, what is going on there? That's just a horrendous decision. Goal line technology is probably the next thing. I'm not saying VAR, but goal line technology. Like, the decision was at the Reading game, where it was 2 yards over the line. And then, actually, if we go back to the start of the season, I think Reading had one, didn't they, at Lee? So it's easy to say, they even themselves out, but that's not good enough. Like, you've got to get these decisions right at the time. So fine, they might even themselves out, but who knows what influence each one of those decisions can have, not just on the game they're in, but the next game week, depending if you win and lose it. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's a difficult one to answer, but I think get them full time, get goal line technology, and give the referees a proper pathway, which includes the women's game, because some top referees go, why would I want to go into the women's game? Because my pathway is to get into the Men's Premier League. Well, if the WSL becomes part of that pathway, you'll have more ambitious and better qualified and more focused referees want to be part of it. But until the WSL becomes, attractive to these referees who want to go on a journey to the Men's Premier League, it's going to be tough to convince people to be part of the women's game when they can't then transfer into the men's game.
I think what you said there is pretty much what a lot of people say on this show. It's a lot of, there's some people on Twitter that say, we need VAR as soon as possible, but you've still got weaker referees. So, you need to build on the referees first, don't you? Goal line technology, absolutely. I think when every stadium can be actually equipped with that, that's definitely the way forward. Colin, sorry, did you want to come in there, mate?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, talking about the Reading goals in particular, but you could look at a team like Chelsea. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want Chelsea winning the league, but you could argue if they lose out by 2 or 3 points, they've had decisions against Arsenal that you could argue have cost them the league because of what happened, there. So, obviously the game at the Emirates, that wasn't great with the goal that was scored there. And you could argue in the reverse fixture, Chelsea could have had a couple of decisions their way. So if they do lose the league, you can imagine the kind of conversations there. And I think it's been highlighted this season more than ever, just because of Sky and obviously BBC. It's more broadcast. You can watch more games, on FA Player. More people are watching it now, and I think it's just being highlighted more.
Whatever happens, we need to support these referees because, one, we do not have a game if we don't have them. Two, as frustrating as it is, that's not going to help anything. Because what I think is the referees do not get enough support from their association, from the people that are thinking about where the investment goes in the game. We had a game against Brighton last season where Kayleigh Green got booked twice and stayed on the pitch. And the referee was very apologetic after the game, but I'm saying, well, what's your assistant doing?
Yeah.
Like, what's the fourth official doing? Like, they've got to do better as well. Although she said, well, first and foremost, she had to take the blame for it. But, they need more support from the officials that are at the game with them and everybody else around the game. Because, unfortunately, we need them.
100%, yeah. Lanzo's question, you kind of touched on this one a little bit earlier. Do you think Champions League football is a major factor on a player coming to the club, or is it due to location, league, style of play, etc.? I think as a Man United fan, we're really hung up on, some of us want top three more than a cup because we think that it's going to attract more people. Yes, we've seen Jackie Groningen, who is a United fan, come across. We've seen Boris sign, Sinja sign, and there's loads of players who have signed on the Bache. But we do feel as a club, we do need to make that next step. We do need kind of, that Champions League spot. We saw last summer we potentially missed out on Bunny Shaw, who went to our rivals. And I'm not saying that we was in for Bunny, but if she's coming to Manchester, she potentially there was something there, but she chose City instead of us. What's your thoughts on Lanzo's question, Willie?
I think 100% you need Champions League football. I don't think it's the only factor, but I think it's a major factor, as he says. That is becoming... it can work against you, and if you're clever with your recruitment, you can use examples where it's worked against people. Some people went to City this year for Champions League football. That never went well. Yeah. So it can also work against you. And if obviously they've got a lot of work to do to get Champions League next year. So you might have signed for City on a 2-year contract last summer, like Haley Razzo or Bunny Shaw, to play Champions League football, and you've had 2 games in 2 years. So, it can work against you. So I don't think players will make it the only factor, but I do think it's becoming a bigger thing, just like the men's game. You know how the men's team are so hung up on finishing top 4 every year because, Haaland's not getting signed for the club if they're not Champions League. And I think that's probably a fact. So, or as close to a fact as you'll get. Why would he knock back Real Madrid, Manchester City, Bayern Munich, and Barcelona to go to a team who's not playing the Champions League? So, I do think it's massive, and if United can secure that this year, you could be in for an exciting summer.
And exciting next season, travelling around Europe, Connor. Let's get our passports. We need to renew them just in case. 2 questions left then. So this one's on screen, and Connor, I know you've got one as well. Completely change of subject. As an Arsenal fan, thoughts on the title race?
Thoughts on the title race? I am going for Chelsea.
Oh, you won't be happy with that.
Because they've seen it, done it, lived it. Arsenal, I just think there's something not quite right there just now. I don't know what it is, but yeah, if I had to put my money on it, I would go Chelsea.
Interesting. I backed Arsenal, unfortunately. So we'll see how that pans out. I think, my final question is just obviously it kind of ties into obviously recent events with the academy win, obviously over Birmingham a couple of weeks ago now. And there's a lot of fans because of the injuries that we've got calling for academy players now to be promoted into the senior side. Just your thoughts on the jump between, because obviously with women's football there's not that middle ground, whereas in the men's you've got the under 23s, 18, 16, 14, so on. At the moment there's just the women's devs, and then you could go out on loan or you get promoted into the first team. What do you think on that jump? And do you think some of those players maybe are ready for the jump, or do you think that maybe the loan system is probably the better way to go for some of our promising devs?
It is a massive jump. It really is a massive jump. I think we need to make the loan system better. I think we need to think of more creative ways of making the loan system better. Obviously, more and more championship teams are going full-time, which I think helps. So it's easier to play, because you want part of the loan experience to live and breathe a different club. Or certainly I think as a head coach, you know, if I'm sending a young player out, I want them to get the full experience. And there's also a little bit of, this might make you appreciate this club a little bit better. When you go there and they've maybe not got the same level of facilities and the same level of players, same level of coaching. But so I think we need to do better with the loan system, but it's a massive jump. I mean, just taking my first England under-18s training session, you know, a month ago, I remember Lauren Hemp being 16-year-old at Bristol, and I thought Lauren Hemp was never at this level. She was much better than that. But when you have one 16-year-old in the first team squad, they can hide quite easily. Whereas if you've got, 23 17-year-olds, it gave me a real stark reminder of that level, and I'd become a little bit detached for that level of player. So I do think that your best one or two could probably be on the fringes, like you guys have seen. Like you guys have seen with some of the players in there. Carrie Jones is a good example. But you know, if it's 4 or 5 training with the first team, it starts having a little bit of an impact on the standard, and your more senior players then start questioning training. So it's a real difficult balance, but I think we need to keep working at that 21s league and improve the loan system, because United especially have got a lot of talent there, as could be seen in that cup final. But you can also see that, you know, there is a big gap between playing in that cup final and playing at Old Trafford this weekend in front of 20,000.
It's not just the first team, is it? It's trying to push into a team that's going to win us titles and trophies. So it's not just like one jump, it's a massive jump. It's the biggest jump you can possibly make. You know, any player that we bring in, we want them to bring, you know, take us to that top 3. So some senior players can't take us to top 3, let alone some of the development players. They might do in the future, but it doesn't mean that they're able to do it right now. Guys, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Willie, for joining us. We really appreciate it. I know we've gone off on a tangent, but it's a great opportunity to talk to someone with so much knowledge. So we tried to pick up a few comments there as well. Connor, what's the plans for the channel for the rest of the week, mate?
So tomorrow, Ben and Matt and myself, we put together a video, mainly Ben and Matt, really. It's an Old Trafford showpiece, I think, is the thumbnail. So a bit of location filming for us, so slightly different, not in our bedrooms and offices, wherever you might be. So a bit of location filming, obviously looking ahead, and it's more in depth. You know, Matt and Ben put a lot of work into that in terms of kind of some in-depth look ahead. Thursday, Jamie Spencer, Man United correspondent, or Man United women's correspondent, coming on. So that should be good as well. Friday Fans Forum, where it's all going to be about looking ahead to Old Trafford. What does Old Trafford mean to you? So we've got some hardcore United fans on, shall we say, coming on. Maybe and some that are attending for the very first time for the first women's game on Sunday as well. So talking all about that. Ben and Matt will be back on Saturday. That will be streamed across both channels, I believe. So it's going across on the men's channel as well as this one. And then Sunday is obviously game day, where there'll be plenty of content all over social media and everything else. So yeah, it's a busy week, but one we're certainly looking forward to.
Excellent. Yeah. Look, thank you again, Willie. Thank you to everybody in the comments. We are going to go now, have a bite to eat. And we shall see you again soon. Enjoy your weekend, guys. See you later.
Thank you, guys. Good luck for the weekend.
Thank you.